Save the Second is a pro-Second Amendment organization. Through good or bad, we're here to help drive and save the NRA from itself and the Second from the infighting that happens among the Second Amendment supporters. Because without the Second, the rest will fall. Views and opinions expressed in this podcast are those of the individual co-host and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Save the Second or their employers. This show offers commentary on the latest news associated with the NRA and Save the Second's endeavor to promote a strong, relevant, effective, and accountable NRA.
Welcome to episode 17 of the Save the Second podcast. Today is Saturday, January 18th, 2020. In this episode, we'll be discussing the NRA Winter BoD Meeting, the NRA candidates for the Board of Directors 2020 election, and more. My name is Ron Carter, and it's my pleasure to introduce Anthony Garcia and Rob Pincus. Anthony, how are you this Saturday?
I am very tired. I'm about to list my house up for sale tomorrow, and today we spent the whole day loading my semi-truck with garbage to go to the dump, and I am completely and utterly destroyed. Everything hurts, so that's how I am.
Oh my God, man! I'm so sorry. That's tough. Rob,
Me too.
How are you?
I'm good. I'm actually pretty energized and stoked. I just got back from a trampoline park with toddler Pincus. So we did some bouncing and running and obstacle coursing and all that. And, I got to start packing up. I got to pick my ties for SHOT Show, leaving tomorrow for the week in Vegas.
Oh, man. Yeah. SHOT Show's coming up. Of course, we all just got back last week from the NRA board meeting, the Winter BoD Meeting, which was in Tyson's Corner, Virginia. Let's jump into that. We experienced some good, some bad, and some ugly. Beyond the good, I think we've mentioned that Anthony and I were on Spotter Up podcast with John Valentine on Sunday last week. But one of the good things that we saw was the openness and the directors wanting to have conversations and being hospitable and courteous and such a drastic change of pace from the September board meeting. Anthony, tell me, man, this was your first NRA Board of Directors meeting. What were your thoughts?
Everything except for them passing the attendance policy went pretty much how I thought it was going to go. It appears there's still a lot of it appears that the whole issue is still a dumpster fire. The NRA is still a dumpster fire, but at least now there's somebody standing there with a garden hose trying to put it out. Like that's really how I kind of view this. There is still a whole lot of problems going on. There is still all the crap we've been talking about, but this time they're at least it looks like they at least have acknowledged the members are upset, and there is some willingness to open a door and work a little bit with us. That's after sitting for a week digesting what I saw, that's the conclusion that I'm coming to.
Hey, Rob, what about you? What do you think?
I think it's a huge shift. I think it was incredibly important that shift happened, and the significance, you don't want to say everything's fine. And I think that's the problem is last week when we were reporting, hey, there's this huge difference in atmosphere and in action that people were, oh, you guys are sellouts. You gave up. It's like, what? If we aren't prepared to acknowledge the good and we aren't prepared to recognize the evolution and we aren't prepared to certainly celebrate that they're responding to what the members want, in some ways very subtly and in some ways very overtly, then why are we doing this, right? If a lot of people accuse the NRA, for example, from the outside of saying, they perpetuate gun issues inside of the community. And this is not just from anti-gunners. There are people inside of gun world who say one of the problems with the NRA is they'll never try to win for real. They're just trying to make things work. So I think that's silly, but it is a complaint that people make, right? That there are entities out there that don't ever actually seem to be wanting to solve their problems. We've said since June, we want to solve this problem and we want to go dormant. right? Or we want to go find some other Second Amendment organization to improve or some other cause to take up in the ethos of Save the Second. Right now, our focus is on the NRA. If we're not prepared to actually be successful, shame on us. We're not doing this I don't need an extra job. I got enough extra jobs. Like, we should be prepared to celebrate the little or big successes. And that's what I think people miss, is that's what we were trying to do, is say, look, we, the members that are talking and Save the Second, are being successful in influencing the behavior of the NRA. And in fact, a significant change in policy for the NRA board is now in existence because of us. We need to be able to celebrate that without pretending that means everything's fine.
Yeah, I'm right there with you. I don't want to ever throw the baby out with the bathwater. And so I want to give credit where credit is due. For example, on Monday, January 13th, the NRA had its first rally in Virginia. And the estimates that I saw were they had some 700 persons in attendance there. They had a press conference there that, well, it really shocked me. That press conference looked more like I was watching Gun Owners of America or FPC. They attacked the red flag law, which has been a huge matter of contention with the NRA, having previously not done anything to address the ERPOs. So, that's good. That's very good. And the digital director for the NRA, Billy McLaughlin, I think he's an excellent guy for that job. He's very good. So, I mean, there's good things going on in the NRA. It's not all bad. But there is a lot of bad. There's a ton of bad. Now, before we get to that bad, I'm sorry, Rob, go ahead.
No, there's still work to be done. Obviously, like, I have the 2A rally flag, wherever it is, over here, right? The 2A rally flag over there is important too. I think to say, we were all told, everybody involved with 2A rally, well, we don't do that. The gun community doesn't do that. And so now to see what's happening more and more often around the country, certainly like lobbying day has been going on forever in Richmond, but now it has turned into something that the community is focused on as a Second Amendment rally. Obviously, what went on with the NRA last week, like there are a lot of organizations who are starting to change the way they deal with the community and deal with the issues we're facing. And some of what Save the Second is doing is I think important across the community, not just focused on the NRA.
No, I completely agree. Absolutely. And as far as the policy is concerned, so of course, one of our first petition drives was to make an NRA director attendance bylaw amendment. Now, we learned a lot through this. Of course, we learned that, once we submit one of those petitions with, the signatures that are necessary, they don't have to enact that bylaw. They can, do with it as they please. It's a proposal to the board. And so we saw them, enact an attendance policy. And I'll bring that up real fast. And it's a policy, not a bylaw amendment, which, I mean, yes, there's some issue there that I have with that. But the fact that they are listening to the members, and now for the first time in the 149-year history of the NRA has a attendance policy for their board members. It's huge to me. Anthony, what are your thoughts on this policy and, all of that?
Well, I think the policy itself lacks any sort of teeth. It leaves open the door for the executive council, not the executive committee, the executive council, to actually do some sort of disciplinary action. And I believe it says in there, including such things as publishing their attendance record, and there's something else too. Asking the director to resign, stuff like that. I think the biggest takeaway from this, being that there's not any teeth to it, it's not set in stone, hey, you miss X number of times, you're out, anything like that. I think the biggest takeaway is the first paragraph there that says all members of the board of directors should regularly attend board meetings, and it goes on to say why, which is something that has bizarrely never existed that I've ever seen, that says board members should actually attend. So I think it represents a change of tone, which I like. And again, it shows that they were willing to work with us and that they are acknowledging that this is an issue. So I think not so much the policy itself, but everything surrounding the policy is a good shift in the right direction. That's my opinion.
And keep in mind, of course, that the NRA is really under the microscope right now from the New York Attorney General. There's been, at this point, there's been hundreds of subpoenas issued and depositions given. And, whereas in, what was it, late July, early August, where you had the NRA officers remove directors from their committee assignments. This is different. This is, it's very different. Now, there's a part of me that thinks, okay, the NRA is really responding to the fact that they're being investigated by the New York Attorney General, not necessarily listening to the members. That's a concern of mine. Rob, what do you think?
No, I mean, this is a direct response to, and this is from the board members, from the evidence I think that's presented. This is a direct response to our petition drive. This was the action of voting members bringing something up. And let's not forget, this has been talked about for a long time, right? This was something that Adam Kraut talked about. It's something that Jeff Knox has talked about. It's something that's been widely reported and greatly lamented, that people like Carl Malone is apparently he's never even been sworn in because he's literally never attended a meeting. Tom Selleck was one that never attended. Ted Nugent is one that rarely attends, although he did attend 2 out of 3 last year. Marion Hammer, of course, everybody's talked about the fact that she collects so much money and is held up on such a pedestal by the organization, but has traditionally not attended very many meetings. So I think this is something that the NRA has been sensitive to specifically because of the complaints and concerns of members. And this is a response to that. And I think that's what's most important. People have made a big deal about, well, it's not a bylaw, or it's not this, or it's not that. It doesn't have this clear set of punishments or these clear black and white standards. Let's think about reality here. Nothing would have been perfect. There are certain people who would never be satisfied with anything that the board would have done and would have poked holes in it. The other thing to remember is that there's gray area and subjectivity and potential lack of enforcement with any bylaw, amendment, policy, however you want to write it, however you want to do it. So now the real test is, okay, so you listened to us. Was this just a placation? Is this just something you did to make us feel good? Let's see what starts happening now with the spring meeting and with the fall meeting. If there's enforcement action, so check with me next year. Right now, I'm checking the box on a win for Save the Second, a win for the members, and granting the NRA some credit for having changed and evolved based on the interest of the members. We'll see next year if they've used this policy effectively or not, right? What's Carl Malone's status in January of 2021?
That's a perfect, absolutely perfect, man. My thoughts exactly. And for those of you curious, at this last meeting in January, of course, there were 54 directors in attendance that I counted during the roll call. 54 out of the possible 73. There's currently 3 vacancies. Now, if you go to the official roll call from the September board meeting, there were also 54. So we're consistently seeing sub 60 directors attend. So I'm really very curious to see how that policy is implemented. And furthermore, I'm very curious to see what the directors are like at the members meeting. Of course, last year during the members meeting, holy smokes, they were all sorts of combative. Jay Prince, who, by the way, was not in attendance.
That's right.
Was not in attendance. Yep. He turned around at the NRA annual meeting, the members meeting, and literally said, addressing our concerns, that was a bunch of bullshit. That was his exact words on stage to the members. So
I was on the stage adjacent to him, and he was pointing at me when he said, over my body, you're not doing anything with Wayne LaPierre. I'm like, what? Are you even serious? And he was just like some dude ranting in a t-shirt. I didn't recognize him. I thought he was drunk, like some random NRA dude ranting.
Right. Right. 100%. I'm very curious to see what the reception is to members at the members meeting. And, for those of you that aren't aware, hey, the members meeting is going to be the place to be. It is, let's see, I've got it right here. I'll scroll it across the bottom somewhere. Oh my goodness. Maybe I don't. It's April 16th through the 20th. April 16th through the 20th in Nashville, Music City Center. So you've got to be there. If you're an NRA member, you have to be at the members meeting. Have your voice heard at the members meeting. The members meeting is for you. Keep that in your mind. Now, let's talk about some of the ugly stuff that we saw at the meeting. I heard multiple times from Wayne LaPierre in 2 different committee meetings. Well, I guess one committee meeting and the board meeting, that the NRA has taken a $100 million hit thanks to the New York Attorney General and the New York State Governor Cuomo. $100 million. Now, that's not just, $100 million that we found lying around. That's $100 million worth of NRA member dues and donations. And that one frustrates me, man, because they're not taking any sort of accountability there. This situation with the New York State Attorney General's investigation and Como and all this, that could have greatly been minimized through due diligence and any sort of accountability. So, yeah, that's absolutely ugly. Anthony, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so first of all, I want to point out that we unfortunately I had to sit through him twice talking, which was bad. I think you guys had to sit through it more. You guys had to sit through it 3 times. That's awful. Yep. Although he's not as bad as the President Carolyn Meadows. We can go into that later. Okay, so the $100 million hit. So let's point out first of all that during Republican presidencies, when firearms are considered safe, they generally they make less money. They bring in less donations because people aren't as concerned. And the number one motivator of people is fear. It's by far number one. That's why a lot of times you'll see organizations like Dudley Brown's RMGO and NAGR, yeah, I'm just going to call them out, sending out these scare notices saying, donate today or they're going to be banging on your door tomorrow. That's why they use these things to generate money. And it's not to say the NRA doesn't, because I've seen that crap too. I'm sure you all have seen the NRA lockout emails and shit. The $100 million hit, I don't know if he was including the fact that they make less money during Republican presidencies or not. I don't know. Say what you want about Trump, but nonetheless, that is a fact. So I don't know if he included that or not, but we're talking.
There was, just real quick, in one of them, he said there was a real cost of $80 million, and I assumed that to mean $80 million has been spent on legal bills and things like that, and maybe travel for people to go up and go to their depositions or whatever. And then I'm assuming the other $20 million is what he's calling lost revenue, because there was a walk back of that $100 million number in one of the 3 presentations I saw of the same talking point. So that's what I got.
Yeah, you're right. He did say, and we've taken 80 million out of the budget, something like that. Something about the budget and 80 million. You're right. I think that on one hand, it's good because they're feeling the pressure monetarily. They're losing donations from members and they're feeling that pressure. And that's a very real pressure hitting somebody in the wallet. It's a very, very real pressure. On the other side, looking as far as as work they could actually be doing, I mean, hey, it's terrible. They don't have the money they need to do certain programs. They're losing money here and there and everywhere. And, things are suffering because of it. But hey, that's what's going to happen when you've pissed off your members. So, and it's going to continue to happen. I think it's going to continue to get worse because they're bleeding money for lawsuits and all sorts of, like you just said, all the legal bills and crap. They're bleeding money for it. And B, people are going to continue to donate less. So it's just going to get worse. It's going to be worse this next year unless they do something, unless there's a radical turnaround. So those are some of my thoughts on it.
Yeah, Rob, what are you thinking there, man?
Yeah, I think that's absolutely the problem is that there's a spin going on, right? Anytime that Wayne LaPierre opens his mouth, you got to look for the spin, right? So having heard that, it really was interesting. I think it was a positive for me personally. Yeah, it's a little bit of an eye roll, but hearing him present in the outreach committee, hearing him present at the main board meeting, and hearing him present at the with the public affairs committee, I think. So the same presentation, right? Hitting the same talking points, clearly a prepared, speech, prepared talking points. It was really interesting to hear the parts that were very consistent, clearly talking points, and then the pieces that were sort of improvised or shifted around for the audience, right? And that's good public speaking. He did, by the end of it, say, I know some of you have had to hear this before, right? And so it's kind of like refining the talking points and refining the speech up to the main meeting, the main board meeting on Saturday. But the $100 million hit, especially with that asterisk at one point with the $80 million real cost piece, and I took it to mean it came out of the budget that they had to spend it on these issues. I think that's really important to see that he's acknowledging the loss as an expense, not just saying, hey, we're getting a real hit here in public opinion, or we're down like normal because there's a Republican in office. Like he's specifically calling out the amount of money that has been spent because of the New York Attorney General's office. Now, here's the problem. In all of his lamenting, the storyline of, he got the call and Bloomberg was behind it and they were going to do it with Cuomo and his hand-picked AG, and they had 20 other states that were going to join in, but the NRA scared the other 20 states. That whole speech, what he never does really is he says we fix things. He even talks about the safe harbor window in New York state law that allows the NRA to try to retroactively go back and fix things. But what he never does is say, hey, we screwed up. We should never have left the door open. We never should have had the problems. We never should have had the issues. We never should have had the dysfunction that allowed the Attorney General to attack us. Right? That never got said in 3 different presentations. So that to me is really, really interesting that he keeps throwing these things out there about the NRA playing victim and doing the right things to fix itself, but there's still not really a heavy mea culpa of we shouldn't have let it get this way, and I apologize as the guy who was in charge when this all happened, right? That hasn't come out of his mouth yet.
Yeah, I 100% agree there. I wish that there would be some sort of responsibility taken, and then, the remedy, the solution to making sure that never occurs again. Now, a thought that just came to my mind, I mean, this is potentially 100 million or 80 million, however much you want to look at it. This is that amount of money that's been spent through the investigation, which the investigation is not even over yet. What happens when indictments are levied? Okay. Is the NRA going to pay for the legal representation for those persons who are indicted and charged criminally? They denied indemnification for Oliver North. Are they going to deny indemnification for, say, Wayne LaPierre or Joe DeBergalis or whoever gets indicted? That's and is that money going to be coming from us, the members? Yeah, what do you think, Anthony?
Is the money going to come from us? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. It's going to come from us. They're not going to deny any of them. They're not going to deny any of them legal representation. Now, here's the thing. Here's the thing too. They're actually, I know they've denied other people that were involved with the NRA legal representation in this, but
yeah, I'm not sure who those are.
I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not really qualified to comment on that.
Oh, neither am I, man. Hey, I'm not a lawyer. I did sleep at a Holiday Inn Express several times this week, but yeah, not a lawyer. Rob, what do you think?
Well, I mean, I think what Anthony's getting at is the board members who've tried for a long time to actually get in writing who the board counsel was, and that the board counsel was actually going to represent them as individuals, right? That's been a question that's been floating out there, and I think some people have resigned over that question, among other issues in the past, in 2019. So it's a fair question. My big question is, what's the tab now with Brewer, right? Because it was 24 million last time I saw a number reported, and that was a long time ago. So I got to think some significant portion of that 80 million or 100 million, whatever it is, has been going to a Dallas, Texas law firm / PR firm. And another interesting thing was in Wayne's presentation, at least twice, he didn't say it at the main meeting. He did say it, I'm sure, at public affairs and I think at the outreach, that the NRA wasn't going to get spiderwebbed again by any organization. Again, playing the victim, like he didn't create the relationship between Hacker and McQueen and the NRA, right? Literally, that he didn't create it, which he did. He acted again like a victim, like we're never going to let that happen to us again. We're going to have multiple firms. We're going to be working with different small firms. We've taken the public affairs office inside. They answer directly to Wayne LaPierre now. It was just really interesting to see the spin that was happening around, the NRA being a victim, which, by the way, plays right into that article in the New York Times of all places we've talked about before, that the apparent friend of Mr. Brewer's firm, Mr. Hakeem, wrote, again, painting Wayne LaPierre as a victim. And it's just astounding that so many people are willing to nod and say yes to that.
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, the buck has to stop somewhere. Who does the buck stop with? Yeah. Oh my goodness. And now, Wayne LaPierre, we know, has been worshipped There's hardly a better word to describe the amount of devotion that some members of the board have for Wayne LaPierre. We saw it occur again, and we saw it occur from, of course, Willis Lee, the second vice president. It's frustrating to me that we still see this culture of cult, right? It's the cult of personality, the cult of Wayne LaPierre. I believe, what was it? Firearms News published a 3-part series on the cult of Wayne. Yeah, it's strange. Anthony, do you think we'll see an end to the worship of Wayne LaPierre?
Not until he's gone. So what we saw there, and I'll explain this real quick, during the main board meeting on Saturday, we saw what can really only be described as a monologue, I guess, from Willis Lee. He got up on stage. He spent probably a good 10 minutes essentially saying, Wayne LaPierre, I love you, and I will stand next to you no matter what. And I kid you not, I think he actually used those words.
He did.
I believe he actually used those words. And he like looked over at Wayne, and he's just saying, man, you're my bro. I'll be with you forever. And I mean, this is in front of everybody. This is in front of the whole board. This is in front of all the people that were there, all the like staff members, people that were watching us. It was bizarre. Like, and you know, I can understand it. Like, if you want to support somebody or whatever, like you include it in a speech, you know, like that kind of thing. But this was beyond what I would expect somebody to say. Like, I really wish we could have recorded it, but we couldn't because they banned all electronic devices from the board meeting. It was one of the most bizarre damned things I have ever seen. Oh, and it looks like you got some notes there.
Oh my gosh.
What do you got, Ron? Do you have some notes from that speech?
Well, yeah, from Willis Lee's second vice president report, the report of the second vice president, he wished everybody first and foremost a happy new year. He went on and said, personnel are nearly cleaned up. Anti-NRA groups mostly supported by Bloomberg. So when he said that, I was wondering if he was referring to us. Who are these anti-NRA groups that are mostly supported by Bloomberg? And just previous to that, he says personnel are nearly cleaned up, as in they've let go persons that were supported by Bloomberg. Is he wearing a tinfoil hat? I don't understand what he was getting at there.
Yeah, he used the words groups supported by Bloomberg that were attacking the NRA. I swear to God, he was talking about us. He had to have been.
He can't on that. He can't. There's no way. I'll give you a lot. Like, yeah, I don't have a lot of tolerance for a lot of the stuff he says, but he's got to be talking about the trace. Just let's just
maybe. Yeah.
In any realm where there's sanity in the human race, he must be talking about the trace. He can't still be throwing that at us.
Okay,
but
good
personnel
point.
Nearly cleaned up. That's so odd.
That was his close. That was another one of those, like, almost we admit there were problems, right? And apparently we admit there still are problems because we've almost cleaned up all the personnel problems, right? So that was, I thought that was at least a little bit of a mea culpa.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You know, something else to mention about this cult of personality around WLP. At one point, Wayne went up and gave a speech, and that was one of the points that he talked about, the 100 million and this and that. At the end of this speech, there was like a standing ovation from people, and a lot of people stood up and clapped. I think everybody did except for me and Rob, and I didn't look behind us, but I assume you too.
There were a couple guys that on, like, you know, right up.
Yeah, it was just the troublemakers.
It was a very slow roll, though. Like, it started with some group in the back, probably employees or staff, and then sort of slow rolled through the audience. And there were a lot of people sort of looking around. That was one of those compulsory, oh yeah, this is the part where we were told to stand up for dear leader.
Right. Yeah, that's what it was. It was, I was reading the Gulag Archipelago, and in one point of it, they talk about how when Stalin would come in, and when he would enter the room, they would all have to clap. And they would have to clap until they literally would, like, fall unconscious, because the first person to stop clapping would be thrown in the gulags and executed. or tortured or whatever the hell they did with them. And that's kind of that's like kind of the sense I got from this. It's like anyway, that's what I have to say on it. There's a definite cult of personality there, and it is sickening. In my personal opinion, it is sickening. I would never want anybody like Willis Lee to give that damn speech about me. You want to say, hey, dude, you're doing a great job. Cool. I appreciate that. If you're going to say on stage, yo, bro, I got your back. I'm going to be with you forever. I'm going to stand by you through everything. Like, get off the damn stage. Let's do something else. I don't know. My opinion.
Now, I love my friends very much, and I tell them all the time that I love them. And, I would even do that in a speech. But we're looking at probably the most dire times in the NRA's existence. The very fate of the NRA is in jeopardy. So, yeah, that's peculiar. It frustrates me that no one wants to confront the real issues and take, action to get the guy that's responsible for this, or at least if Wayne LaPierre is not responsible, he still allowed it to happen under his watch. He still needs to be held to accountability. And it's frustrating. Rob, what do you think, man? Do you think we'll see Wayne LaPierre ever vacate his throne?
I thought it was interesting that there's been an evolution of the Wayne sacrificing himself to fix these issues storyline. And now it's gotten so that the evolution, I think the best evolution, and I hope it just kind of stays where it is, because it at least, makes a bizarre amount of sense, that he was seriously considering retiring after winning after Trump won the 2016 election. And he makes the story like he was packing up his desk and he was thinking about the good old days, and he had a little tear in his eye. And just as he was getting the box and he was getting ready to go, the phone rang. And he thought about not answering it, but you know what? Maybe it's important. I'll answer it. What? The New York State Attorney General's office? By golly, there's no way I could leave now. And unpacks the box, and now he's going to stay and see it through. It's like, come on, man, stop. Just stop. But that is like the evolution of this story where he can't leave now. It's his life mission to address these problems. And now it's the 2020 election. He can't leave because of the 2020 election, and he can't leave because there's not a succession plan. And it's like the drama around it was actually, I thought, well scripted this time, at least. I like the imagery they have around he was walking out the door and the phone rang.
Yeah. And for those of you that think we're just trashing Wayne LaPierre, so good with the bad. I think one of the best things he did recently was to bring all of the media in-house. Okay, that was nice. And getting, like I said earlier, Billy McLaughlin as the digital director, that was a good move. All right, so he's done a few good things. I'll certainly give him that. And in many cases, the NRA does stuff that we're not even aware of, and they deserve credit for it. Okay. Yeah, understand that. But also understand that the NRA is not Wayne LaPierre. The NRA is its members, the 5 million members of the NRA. There's no one person that is above those members. Okay? So please keep in mind that this is a true legitimate problem, that we have this idolatry of a person instead of the absolute allegiance to the Second Amendment to the Constitution of the United States. Whenever you have somebody that comes in between, that you're going to have conflicts. And that's what we've exactly seen recently, not only with the New York State Attorney General, but with the bump stock prohibition, with ERPOs and more. So, gentlemen, anything else to say on that or the board meeting?
I'll say that it was conspicuously obvious that Josh Powell wasn't mentioned or present.
Yes.
And that William Brewer III was not mentioned or present. Now, Josh only was mentioned once that I remember, but he was present, sort of hovering, right, the whole time back in the fall. There have been a lot more revelations about the problems with him, a lot more calls from board members, public and private, for him to be removed or at least explained. And when he was obviously missing from the conversation and physically missing. And everyone I talked to, staffers, board members, there was speculation that he may not be around for long, if he's maybe not even around anymore officially in any official capacity. And people were very afraid to touch that but it was very obvious that something has changed or is changing there. As far as Brewer, the head of the PR department inside of the Brewer law firm was introduced at one meeting, and it was the public affairs meeting, so that would make sense. And in fact, I think it was just one of the meetings where he went around the room, so he introduced himself as such. So he was not actually brought into the conversation, now that I remember that correctly. William Brewer was not mentioned at all, and he was a major feature of the meeting in September. And of course, there's been a lot of negativity from the members and from the public about his relationship with Wayne and the NRA. So the fact that neither one of those two people was mentioned was important. I'm looking forward to it, the moment where Jason May or whoever it's going to be, Craig Spry, somebody takes more of a leadership role out of the shadow of Wayne LaPierre, and Wayne LaPierre is the guy who's also there, right? And I think one of those two guys is probably who we're going to see take more of that public-facing leadership role in one way or another, and I would be pleased with that right now at this juncture if either one of them stepped up. I think that we're going to have to see that transition, right? Which we had seen with Chris Cox over the years. Chris took a much more forward role, was obviously a leader in and of himself, not just a guy that was being like allowed to speak because, you know, Wayne said it was okay. We're going to need to see somebody else step up like that. And it's very apparent that the NRA as an organization, nor Wayne LaPierre, nor the leadership of the board are wanting that to happen right now. And I don't think there's any chance that's going to happen internally until after the 2020 election. The question is, how fast is it going to happen after the 2020 election? Because now we're within a year. And that's been what many of the board members who are sympathetic to the reform movement, but not overtly calling for reform, have been saying, you know, we just got to get through this election. We just got to get through this election. Okay. Kind of like I am with the attendance policy thing. Like, let's check in with me again in January of 2021. Let's check in again on this January of 2021 on where the board and Wayne himself are on this evolving storyline if we just have to get past 2020. If nothing else happens between now and then, which doesn't look like internally it will, but externally it might.
Right. You know, I've got a couple things to say there. They're not exactly tied, but very similarly. I was very encouraged to see Jason May step up and say what he had to say in the legislative policy meeting and the public affairs meeting. And the guy, to me, is the real deal. That's just me. Now, he's very young. I think he's my age, or perhaps Anthony's age. You know, he's a younger guy, but you know, he seems to be very squared away. Oh, come on, Rob.
You are literally 1 year older than me.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Well, at least we got, you know, Dr. AARP over here, you know. sorry, Rob. I'm getting some gray, you know, so yeah. But no, I digress. Jason May, I think he's an excellent guy, the head of the Institute for Legislative Action. I want to see him step up more. I really do. I would love to see an after action report from their January 13th rally. I mean, that would be really cool to see, you know, kind of their, I mean, not to give away all their cards, but to say, hey, this is what we learned. This is what we're going to do next time. This is how we're going to win. You know, that's what I'm hoping to see. But now something else, and to kind of sidetrack, we saw the numbers, or at least we were given a presentation on the numbers for School Shield. So previously there was an article that we reported on, or at least we talked about. It was reported by the Daily Beast and a couple others that School Shield had been merely a front for solicitation and fundraising. And, you know, I can very much see how that was the case, say in 2016, but now in 2019, they've have some 733 assessors, law enforcement assessors, and, you know, 20 something instructors of this particular program. So it's not fair to say that it's merely a front. And by the way, they've given, you know, hundreds of $1,000s in grants to schools. It's not fair to say that it's merely a front for solicitations and fundraising, but it is safe to say that they were so slow, painfully slow. Anthony, what were your thoughts on that, and any other thoughts concerning all of this?
Yeah, I think you're right. If you looked at it after the first couple of years of School Shield, and we talked about this, there had been so little done that one could go ahead and say, yeah, okay, this is BS. But that's kind of how the NRA is. They move insanely slow. Like they make molasses look fast. So it's it's not really, it's no surprise of mine that one could get that opinion. Now, what they've done now, you just mentioned they have over 700 and something police assessors. I didn't understand what that was, and we clarified that before. I'll explain that for anybody listening. What they do is they train law enforcement, and this does count as part of their continuing education credits. So law enforcement is incentivized to take these things. What they'll do is they'll train them how to assess the school, like ways that a gunman could get in, or places bombs could be planted. I don't know. Whatever they do, they assess them for security risks. And then what the cops are supposed to do is they're supposed to get invited to schools in their areas. They go to those schools. They give them the information. Okay, this could be fixed. This could be fixed. This could be better. The school takes that information, submits it to the NRA for a grant, and the NRA gives them a grant. The NRA has given out, according to their numbers, about $1 million total worth of grants. And they were talking about some of them. They showed some newspaper articles. They can't release the names of the schools they've given money to, just out of respect for privacy of the schools, but they were showing where schools had publicly talked about it. So that's the intention of the program, which I didn't even understand the intention of it before. So that's the intention of it. And it like I say, they've given out $1 million based on this. So they have been doing something. Over the last couple of years, it's improved a lot. It's gotten a lot more people trained to be assessors. So after having looked at all the information, assuming all of it is true and correct, which I don't doubt that it is, I think it is actually doing something. How much, I guess we'll have to wait and see, but that's my feeling on it.
Anything to add, Rob?
Well, I think I saw the presentation twice. I thought it was really interesting how much it was talked about, and the amount of time that the 4 or 5 person team from School Shield was given at a couple committee meetings. And then again, it was talked about at the main board meeting. So I thought it was interesting, and it was clearly a response to that article. It was clearly a response to that attack to sort of set the record straight or address the attack. And yeah, if you read the fine print of the hit piece article, it's accurate, right? From the 13 or 12 to 2014, nothing had been done. And even in their own presentation, the first class or the first assessor training that was done was like 2017. They did 1, or 2015, whatever it was. And then the next year they did like 3. The next year they did 5 or whatever it was. But it took, and then until last year where they think they did 40 something. It was a total of, they did $600,000 last 2018. 2019 they did $1 million. So it's like all in 1.7 million or something they've given out. The problem here is you have to ask how much fundraising, how much credibility, how much did they go out and pander with, hey, we're putting the School Shield together, and how much did they bring in? So if they brought in $30 million over those first few years, and it takes them 5 years to put out 1.7 and to affect 140 schools or whatever, it's still an incredibly disproportionate thing. Because I remember when that press conference happened, and remember this, I believe, was the press conference where it cost us millions of dollars to fly Wayne LaPierre back from the family vacation that the NRA was paying for in the Bahamas to do this press conference, days after the Sandy Hook massacre, when these initiatives were started, right, and first started being talked about. And I remember the press conference. I remember being frustrated and disappointed from day one that this was not a grassroots Second Amendment, empower people to keep and bear arms and celebrate what a human being who is keeping and bearing arms in the public space, including schools, can do to protect children. This was immediately a move to armed professionals working with law enforcement, obviously training law enforcement assessors, putting on the classes for free for local law enforcement. Like, none of this is what the NRA is supposed to be pushing, right? I'm not saying armed teachers. I'm saying let teachers be armed, right? The NRA should be fighting for the right to carry for teachers in their workplace. We shouldn't be making this all about metal detectors and cops that are trained to assess for security, which is really all this program has turned out to be. So the program was confusing to me at the beginning. It was a disappointment the NRA would go that way. It's been a big question mark about how well they're spending the amount of money they may have raised for the attention they got to say we're doing something about school shootings, and even the execution of it now is a little bit ham-fisted. So I'm nonplussed. I'm glad to see they're doing something, and it's not a complete scam. But I think the thing they're doing is the wrong thing for the NRA to be doing.
Yeah, I agree. Especially when you look at the amount of instructors, 110,000, NRA instructors that could very easily, take this class and go out and do that. Go ahead,
By the way, ICE Training Company has trained more instructors in school attacker response course training than apparently that program has. And we stood our SARC program, the school attacker response course, we stood that program up within 4 months of the Sandy Hook massacre. So yeah, I get it. The NRA moved slow, but you get no credit or from me. You didn't, and they made that plea, right? It took a long time to make this a thing. It didn't take there were 17 others, Alice, Faster Saves Lives in Ohio, the SARC program. There are programs all over the place that either existed or spun up very quickly. The Alert program out of Texas. You didn't have to reinvent the wheel on this NRA, so that's bullshit.
Yeah, I'm with you there, man. So, guys, I tell you what, let's wrap that up. Now, in the comments this week, we've had a lot, well, at least in the last 48 hours, a lot of questions concerning, Rob, your work with Dan Gross. Yeah, right.
What?
Yeah, Dan Gross. I mean, I don't know if you've heard it. Have you had any text messages or anything like that?
I got a couple.
Oh, buddy.
Yeah.
So for those of you that don't know, Dan Gross is the former leader of the Brady campaign. He spoke at the 2A rally on November 2nd. I went back and rewatched that today because I don't know much about Dan Gross, and I think there's a lot of people that looked at the press release and had a lot of concerns. I have a lot of concerns. So, Rob, please, if you wouldn't mind giving us a little bit of information on that, thank you.
Yeah, I know it's a big tangent. We talked about it a little bit in the pre-show. It's not STS business, but I understand that the questions have been asked, and I'm here. So this is actually the first time I'm addressing it in a podcast. People, if you have any questions about it, go to my Facebook, go to my Instagram, go look at the updates that were put out today, which is Saturday, in response to the sort of firestorm that was created after, and this is how the PR spin, right? The PR guy who we have hired we've tasked with helping us gain media attention to this entity, right? And our first launch of a project called GunPro next week to coincide with SHOT. His job as a PR guy is to create interest, right? Create a little buzz, create a little bit of curiosity in the media and in the public. Well, he did it. Good job. Yay, PR guy. Problem is, it wasn't really a press release, right? And this was a semantics issue to me on Wednesday that became super crazy important by Friday. And the semantics were around the difference between a press release and a media advisory, was the term he used. And he said, well, so we're just putting out a media advisory. And it's like 8 sentences or whatever. It tells people when we're going to be talking and who's going to be talking and sort of like 100,000-foot view of what's going to be talked about. But that's it, just to pique curiosity. Okay, well, good job, PR guy. You piqued curiosity. The problem is people in social media, in gun world especially, just started filling in all the blanks themselves. And they granted, some of them went to crazy land, but that's what happens, right? So they went into crazy land of, oh, look, Rob Pincus is working with the Brady campaign, which you can't hold that thing upside down in a black light and find that anywhere in the media advisory. And what people were missing was kind of what's going on with Dan Gross. Well, here's the bottom line is, if you would have asked me on Wednesday, Dan Gross and I both believed that we crossed this bridge back in November when he spoke at the 2A rally, right? Because with the press that we got at AmmoLand, Bearing Arms, the interview that John Crump did, Cam Edwards, the response he got from his speech, the interaction he had with the other speakers, some of whom were very skeptical that he should be allowed to speak, but then once he spoke and they saw the response and heard the words, they were like, oh, that was brilliant, and really appreciated him being there. I think, everyone that I talked to anyway, that was the feedback. So we thought we had crossed this bridge. Like, the gun community knew that 2 years ago he left Brady because of reasons that he isn't permitted, quite frankly, to talk about, for all kinds of reasons having to do with his separation. But obviously there wasn't, he wasn't happy leaving Brady, or he would have stayed, right? Or Brady wasn't happy with him one way or the other. So the fact that he is wanting to work with the gun community on advocacy issues and education issues and awareness issues around responsibility, which he has seen me talk about for over a decade very loudly, the issues that I think can be better at and should be better at and should be very vocal about, risk mitigation and responsibility and education, safety, good storage practices, all those things in a non-legislative way. And I think that was the only sentence that was missing from the media advisory that would have made it very simple is there's no law here. There's no gun control. There's no policy recommendation, no regulation, no legislation, none of that. CGRR is all about campaigns that are voluntary inside of the gun community, education and awareness around responsibility while celebrating and defending Second Amendment rights. And his speech made that very clear. I think the updated information that we put out today and yesterday makes that very clear. I understand why people, were curious about it. I'm a little bit, I think it was a little overkill on the, memes created around, oh, look, gun control now is the new thing. And that wasn't ever the thing. So yeah, and more questions, they can go look at my social media, not Save the Second social media, but my personal social media and see the information they need, or just send me a question, ask questions. We're going to be talking about this more, and we are actually going to be inviting Gun World Media and any leader or influencer, anybody as a SHOT Show that wants to step off the exhibit floor and come have a chat with us Thursday morning. It's going to be more of a Q&A period, like what is this CGRR about? What is Gun Pro, which is an all-voluntary program to increase responsibility inside the gun community and communicate to the rest of the world that the gun community is very responsible and wants to be even more so. If people are curious about what it is, show up Thursday morning if you're going to be at SHOT. Otherwise, just look for more information to be released soon. Yeah,
zero legislative efforts, correct?
It was like, I met Dan 18 months ago now. He came out to a class. He spent 2 days out in the freezing rain with a bunch of, very pro-gun guys in my classes, as you can imagine. I spent a lot of time getting to know him before we even committed to trying to find a way to collaborate and sort of building trust, right? And trying to figure out how genuine he was. I think that the frustrations that he's expressed, that he expressed in that speech, and go to Breitbart and look at the speech that he gave. They have, very concise with a good write-up about it. Dan Gross at Breitbart, Dan Gross 2A Rally. You'll find the speech, 5-minute speech. It took me a while to build trust. Once I had the trust there, then it was, okay, what can we do? And one of the very firm boundaries is anything we're going to do together has nothing to do with gun control, except maybe to point out that where Dan and I both agree gun laws haven't worked or won't work or aren't even close to the best option that we have to reduce suicides, injury through negligence, crimes with guns, whether it be because it's a stolen gun or, an illegally sold gun out the back door of a bad gun shop or whatever. Like, there's things we can do that have nothing to do with adding laws to the books. And we both agree on that. And that's where CGRR is operating.
Very cool, man. Thank you very much for, clarifying that. I really appreciate your time there speaking about it. Anthony, do you have anything to add or question?
I'll just put in real quick. I'm one of these like super hardcore constitutionalist guys. So I look at the Second Amendment. It says the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed, which is the real legal statement in that Second Amendment. So I believe personally all gun control laws are unconstitutional. I fight to that end. I've been involved in this movement for a long time, for a decade now. It's a long time for me. For a decade now, fighting politically. Years ago, I'm so hardcore, right? I've got civil disobedience cases to my name. I have 2 separate cases where I engage in firearms civil disobedience. So I bear the scars. I've got skin in the game. And everything I've seen from Rob regarding this, and he showed us a little extra detail. Everything regarding this, I have no problem with any bit of it. I think anybody who's pro-gun and in this movement won't have any issue with this. So I say just let them come out Thursday, because I think Thursday you're going to release some more details, right? You guys are going to have a press conference, check out what they're doing, and I don't think anybody's going to have a single issue. I don't. And that's where I'm coming from.
Yeah, I'm coming from the same place, man. I mean, hey, every gun law in existence is an infringement, and I don't like it at all. So on the same hand, responsibility is huge. Your truck is not a holster. So there's responsibility there, okay?
Where's your pocket? I think I have to say it now too, right? Every gun law is unconstitutional and an infringement, right? I think that's if that, and I always tell people like gunrights.info, I realize it requires reading, it requires time, but every time I see something on like an Instagram comment about how I don't believe in gun rights or whatever, it's like literally gunrights.info. It can't be any more explicit. I paid the money through GoDaddy to own the URL. I typed out the words. Go look at Rob Pincus's position on every gun law or gun issue you can imagine, I think is listed there. And it's also then the position of Second Amendment organization, which I'm the executive vice president of, approved by the board members of 2AO as our official positions. But I wrote them. They're my positions. Go look at them. There is no doubt that I've been pretty clear. The other thing is you got to remember, I've devoted my life to educational practices, right? So like my adult professional life has been in education, educating people about how to be better prepared to use guns to defend themselves, people they care about, use guns as armed professionals, or exercise their rights responsibly. So I'm not the guy that goes in and lobbies congressmen. I'm not the guy that shows up and gives testimony in front of the Senate. I'm not the guy that shows up and fights court battles, right? I fund some of them. I contribute to that stuff. I'll speak out against them. I'll explain why the NFA should go away, but it's not really my thing. My thing is advocacy and education. And that's where CGR is going to work, is advocacy and education. That's where 2AO does most of its work, is grassroots advocacy and education, because that's what I do, right? I'm not the guy that just pounds the table and says the laws are bad and then goes into a courtroom or goes into a legislative hall. I've been working on the people, right? Hearts and minds and whatnot. So that I'm going to be consistent with that, because that's sort of my lane, if you will.
Yeah, well, my lane has quickly evolved into a strict reformation of the National Rifle Association of America. Of course, that's what we're here to do, man. We're here to make the NRA strong, relevant, effective, and accountable, by God. We got one of our goals completed this past weekend. We've got 4 more to go. And oh my goodness, folks, we need your help, especially to try to make the NRA better. To state the facts, frankly, is not to despair the future nor indict the past. The prudent heir takes careful inventory of his legacies and gives a faithful accounting to those of whom he owes an obligation of trust. That's coming from John F. Kennedy. If you look at it through the religious lens, Proverbs 13:24 says, to those who think, or correction, rather, whoever spares the rod hates their children, but the one who loves their children is careful to discipline them. That discipline is needed in the NRA to establish accountability. Thank you very much for watching. Thank you very much for listening. You can follow us on YouTube, Facebook, of course, Instagram, Twitter. Podcasts can be found in your favorite podcast app. The website is savethe2a.org, savethe2a.org. Nick Dooley is the voice of our introduction. He's the owner-operator of Dooley Defense in Pierre, South Dakota. All of us at Save the Second are volunteers. We don't get a dime from this. We're doing this out of our own time in the hope that our Second Amendment rights will be better advocated and expanded through a reformed National Rifle Association of America. A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. Thank you very much for watching. Have a great Saturday and enjoy the Super Bowl.